Hey, Tribe Builders, this is Tanya Rooney, and I am super stoked to talk to this guy today that I'm going to chat with. I met him. Okay, so I've never actually met him in real life, which is totally cool because that kind of happens anyways in my business life too. But I found out about Rob when I was watching another person or a friend of mine on Instagram, and she was talking about this dude that she hopped on a call with, and she gave him an hour. And then I found out a little bit more because obviously I was a little nosy. I started clicking in a little bit more and found out that there's this human being in the United States that's trying to meet 10,000 people. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to him today and let you guys like hear some of the stuff he's doing and the community that he's started to build because of his goal. So yeah, without further ado, Rob Lawless. How's it going, Rob?
Hey, it's going well. It's good to be
Uh,
here. Good to see you again.
yeah, awesome. Okay. I'm just gonna like kick off already. Like what just tell people what you're up to.
Yeah, so I am basically 9 years into this mission to spend an hour with 10,000 different people, an hour one-on-one with each person. I started November 11th of 2015. So coming up
Wow.
on the 9 year anniversary, and it was a project born. I've always loved meeting people, and then I went to Penn State University, so I went to a big school. Both my older siblings went there, and I got involved early and often. So I built like a very natural network there, and was always running into people on the way to class, out at the bars and whatnot. And it was bliss for me. And I studied finance and minored in accounting and entrepreneurship. So I graduated in 2013 and then started doing consulting for Deloitte. And like I met a girl 3 weeks before school let out. We started dating. I got this job at Deloitte. Deloitte was going to pay for me to get my MBA after 3 years, but I was checking all the boxes and just not being fulfilled. And I think uh, one of the harder contrasts for me was going from like this place where I felt like I knew everyone and connection just came so authentically to sitting in a cubicle in Deloitte, feeling like I wasn't meeting new people, or if people were connecting, it had to be over some type of agenda. So that combined with my desire to create my own path, I was like, I'm just going to try to meet 10,000 people and see what happens. Like, and it's been a very cool journey. Like I have no expectations for where the project is supposed to go. It's really just like a case study in what happens when you connect with people for no reason, but you do it 10,000 times. And I just met number 6,554. So we're,
Whoa.
yeah, over 65% of the way there.
That's so crazy. Okay, how did you pick 10,000? Like it's a very specific like, hey, it's not 1,000, it's not 100,000.
I think it was just like a very, very little strategic thought went into it. I think I just thought that it was a high enough number that would turn people's heads, but it was still achievable. But achievable in the sense that I would have to work towards it as a full-time career. Because I knew like so the math, if you were to meet one new person every single day with no days off, it would take 30 years to do 10,000. So I knew like I was kind of forcing my own hand to turn it into my career because yeah, I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And I went from Deloitte to a tech startup. I started this when I was there, and then that company was acquired 8 months later and I was laid off. So I jumped into this full time, and I've been doing it full time ever since. But yeah, just thought it was cool.
I think that's so awesome. So, I talk to a ton of business people on my podcast because I love business. It's like totally my jam. Tell me how you've kind of made this into a business because how on earth do you monetize literally meeting 10,000 people? Tell me more.
Yeah, I guess the strategy was just to do it long enough to figure out how you
Hmm.
monetize it. Because I thought when I started it, it was 2015, and I feel like Instagram and social media was so pure back then. Like if in 2015, if someone was promoting a product, it was because they actually used it and they wanted to share it with people.
Yeah.
And then people caught on and they're like, oh, actually, this people will give me the product for free. And oh, actually, now they're going to pay me. Oh, actually, this any product will pay me. So it just became less pure over time. But back then, I was like, I think what I'm doing is very interesting. And if other people think it's interesting and I can naturally build an audience on Instagram, then eventually I can leverage that audience to partner with brands that care about human connection. So the thinking was like, Verizon, like I upload every photo using their network. So there's a tie there that they're fostering human connection, or Instagram was the way that I was connecting with everyone. So there's a tie there. My Apple iPhone, like you remember that shot on iPhone campaigns where they'd have
Mhm.
like the photos? I was like, all right, well, all of these connections are being created using an iPhone. And it kind of goes against what the narrative around technology and human connection is. So I thought there were some cool storylines there that I could explore in terms of partnerships. But I just realized like I didn't care to try to create a following. Again, back in those days, if you remember, it was like, oh, like for like or follow for follow. I
Yeah.
never wanted to do that stuff because I was like, if you're not interested in my content, then there's no reason for you to follow me. But if you are, that's great. So I just wanted to build like a very grassroots audience, and it doesn't bode well with partnerships and engagement and stuff, and all like the creating the media kit and whatnot. I still
Mhm.
thought I was going to do that, and I was getting press. Like in 2018, I was on Ryan Seacrest's radio show. 2019, I was on Kelly Clarkson's talk show. 2020, I did the Today Show. So each year it was getting bigger, and I thought that I would leverage that, and I did to an extent. My biggest partnership was with WeWork, the co-working space. So
Yeah.
they were paying me to meet people at their locations one day out of every week. And I had done other partnerships with like a dog walking company or a wedding band here in Philly, or a mom and pop pharmacy, where they would just pay me like $500 and I would tag them in every post for the month. And at the bottom of the caption, I'd put presented this month by Fishtown Pharmacy or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of how I was doing it. And then in August of 2019, so by the way, like I was doing these partnerships, but also losing money every month. And I ended up living in LA for a year and a half, crashing with a friend who was generous enough to host me for that entire time. I moved back in with my parents multiple times. I lived in Hoboken for 9 months, again, crashing with a friend and his wife. But when I went to Hoboken in August of 2019, I met a girl there who was a public speaker. Her name is Michelle Puller. And she was like, yeah, this is a great industry. And I think that there's room for you in this industry. So after I talked with her and realized how well she was doing with it, it made me take it a bit more seriously. And over time, and there's a whole story of that we can jump into, but I dove into public speaking, did my first paid speech April of 2021, and I have my 70th paid speech in a couple weeks. So that's kind of become the way that I've monetized.
Totally cool. And what kind like tell me your subject. And is it the exact same speech every single time, or it's, does it evolve every single time?
So I speak about the value of intentional connection and how to create it in our personal and professional lives, like
Mhm.
why people should be more habitual about connecting with people instead of it just being a passive experience. And the bones of the speech are always very similar. Like what people hire me to talk about, that the speech is very similar, but it might be geared towards engagement and retention of talent in one talk, or it might be geared towards connection in the workplace and hybrid work environments or work from home environments, or another might be geared towards social wellness. And it's always iterating. Like right now, I'm actually in the process of updating my entire speech to kind of take it to the next level. But yeah, it's essentially like me sharing my story, how I got into what I do, the three levels of value that I see to human connection, which to me are an increased sense of belonging, the expansion of your perspective, and the opening of doors to new opportunities. And then I give people a framework that they can use to connect with anyone. So it's called the friend framework. It's because you can think about anyone's life like a timeline and tease out their story by asking questions within the categories of family and relationships, industry, which is essentially education into career path, entertainment, which is hobbies, and then needs and dreams, like what do you want for the future and what do you need to get there. And I break people out into pairs and I have them discuss these different facets of their lives with each other. So it's very interactive. And then I talk about the value of reflecting on what we've learned from people and how that has led other people to create their own versions of my project, and how it's allowed me to lock in the value of what I've learned. So that's kind of the flow of it. But yeah, there's a constantly changing within it.
No, that's totally cool. Have you I find it to be so interesting because obviously like I care about human connection. It's probably one of the things I care about the most. Like I will choose humans over stuff like most of the time.
Yeah.
And I love that you preach this and I'm curious, how do you How do you create community around this? Like you have, I'm going to go with you have like hundreds of, you probably have thousands of communities at this point, because to me, like, there's like for like all over the place. And maybe you get five people you talk to through this community and then this
Mhm.
community. Can you tell me, like, I don't know, just how do you deal with all these different communities? Do you like meet somebody and then they're just kind of like in your Rolodex and you might see them again someday? Or is the intention to ever like foster more things after that?
I'm pretty passive about like I meet people, and then if they become a tight connection of mine, I like that. If
Hmm.
they never see or talk to me again, that's fine too. And I think that openness is part of why the project has worked, because a lot
Hmm.
of people, like, they may just want to be part of it for that hour,
Yeah.
and then other people, like, they may want to see me again. And I run into people all the time from my project, and so it's kind of like trying to recreate what I had at Penn State. There were plenty of people there that I just met out at a party one time, but then I'd say hi to them if I saw them on the streets. And that happens all the time here. And I've run into people in airports and in different cities. I've gone out to dinner with people afterwards and who've become good friends. I see people who are working the front desk of the gym. I've seen people that we realize we go to the same gym, but like after we meet, and then I'll see them there.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of a lot of different things. And I do belong to a bunch of different communities because, for example, like I met someone who was part of the creative community of Houston, and then they started introducing me to all their friends down there. And then I suddenly had like this blossoming creative community in Houston. I live in Philadelphia. Or someone who is making like little pin art, and then that sent me down like a track. But then I'll meet someone who's a surgeon, and then I'm meeting a bunch of different doctors and people in that area. So I just go in with an open mind to all of it. Like, I'm just there to bring respect to the table and to learn from people. And it's interesting because I don't really see myself as someone, like, there's community in my project in the sense of, if you are part of it, you share an experience with the other 6,500 people who are part of it, and you can talk to them about something, and you're like part of this 10K friends community. But I'm not someone who's like, okay, join the Facebook group afterwards and we're all going to do this thing. For whatever reason, like, I'm not a host in that sense. I'm not a planner at all. Like, I am a routine person, but I like to just sit back. Like, it reminds me of doing book reports as a kid. I hated that you had to do a book report on the book. I was like, I just want to read the book and enjoy it for what it is. And so I very much take that approach to connecting with people. Like, I don't want to have this agenda attached to it afterwards. I just want to connect with someone and enjoy them for who they are in that moment. And where we go from there is where we'll go from there.
That's super cool. So, when you go to a new city, do you like keep everybody in a spreadsheet and you at least know where they are? And if you like, so if you all of a sudden we're going to go to Minneapolis, Minnesota, are you a person that would reach out to anybody that's on that list to be like, hey, can we meet up? Or maybe even like, do you know somebody that I can meet? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I have. It's just because of the way that Instagram, you used to not be able to create page breaks in your captions. So I'd have to write in iPhone notes and then copy and paste it into Instagram. And then it just stuck because that's searchable. So I have everyone's story in my iPhone notes. So if I wanted to look yours up, I could go find it immediately. And I do that. Like, with my speaking, I've been lucky enough to speak in Bangalore, India. And then last month I was in Berlin. And I did that both times. I messaged people that I'd met, because I'll just search like Berlin, and then I'll find all the stories of people that I've met who live in Berlin, and message them and be like, hey, I'm going to be in town if you want to catch up, or if you know anyone that I can meet. So when I was in Berlin, some of the people that I'd met through my project who lived there made introductions for me, and then I met their friends. So it's a beautiful way to travel. Like, it was really cool. India, same thing. I met like 13 people, and instead of trying to go on Yelp or whatever and trying to figure out what's cool,
Huh?
you just set up meetings with people and like, take me to whatever restaurant you like or whatever site you think is cool or coffee shop, and they take you. But then they're giving you, like, when I was in Berlin, the one guy, he's from Germany. I think he's from Cologne, but he lived in Berlin for the last 24 years. And we spent 2 hours walking around the city, and he's giving me all the history of East Berlin and West Berlin and his take on everything. And like, I'm seeing all of the sights of Berlin. This is like things that people would pay for in Airbnb experiences, but I'm just lucky enough to get through people who are willing to share an hour with me. So it's how I intend to travel anywhere now.
That's so cool. Do any of your people like so I'm gonna go with like your closer friends, did they travel and then ask you like, hey, could you see if there's anybody I can meet there? Has any of that stuff happened?
I have not had that happen yet because I don't know if any of my friends are in that same mode of like, let me go connect with a bunch of locals while I'm there. Um, but that's why I
Okay.
love the project too, because and I always tell people this in my talks. There's no agenda. Like the project is made up, right? I just made it up out of my own mind. But now I have an excuse to connect with people when I'm in a place because it's like, oh, you're helping me reach this goal.
Yeah.
And there's no agenda, but there's context. And so, like, if you create a connection goal for yourself, then you too have that power to be like, oh, I'm trying to meet new people in this area. So, yeah. But in general, like, if I see people through my project who remind me of each other, or I think that they should be connected, I'll try to make those connections, regardless of like travel or whatever.
Yeah, that's super cool. Have there been any like surprising things like you just said you try to connect people? Have you seen anything really cool happen when you connected two random people to each other because of some shared thing that you know about them?
I, I'm sure there has. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I know that there was a couple. There were two people that I had met separately who were dating each other at one point. Now I don't know if they found each other through me or through other people. They're not dating anymore, so it was unsuccessful. But uh, I know that one of the people that I met saw like I'd met with a financial advisor, and then he started using him as his financial advisor. Like people have
Really?
done business with each other because they've seen the posts from my thing. But there was a girl that I met in Chicago. I think she's like 25. She's a recent college grad, and she's going through cancer treatment. And she was talking about how it's hard to find community in Chicago and to talk to people about the fact that she has cancer. And she's like, I just like it's not really something you can go up and connect with anyone about. So she didn't know anyone, and I had met other young people through my project who've overcome cancer. So I was able to put her in touch with them, and they were able to have phone calls with each other. So
That's so
that,
cool.
yeah, and I would argue that's like more valuable than any of the business transactions that have come from the project because that's like true, real value of people connecting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like I don't know, that shared sense of whatever it is, whether it's something as crappy as cancer or something as great as, like having a new kid or something. Like there's so many cool things that happen with those new connections that I
Mm-hmm.
think are super valuable for people. Like when you're going through stuff, if you have somebody that just went through it, so like just for example, somebody just had a baby and they should be talking to somebody that's like got an 8-month old because how shared is that kind of experience because they're just coming out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like it's not like somebody that has a 10-year-old wouldn't be worth having as a friendship as well, but somebody that can really understand what you're going through. I mean, that kind of connection is, I find it to be very important.
Yeah, it's just all
um,
relatability.
yeah, no, absolutely. Can you tell me, so, I mean, you've been doing this for 9 years at this point. Has there been times that you've just been like, holy crap, how can I keep going? Or, any like doubts that actually creep up ever with this
Oh
project?
yeah, all the time. Not really. So people would be like, "Oh, do you ever wish that you did 1,000 or 500 or like 5,000?" And no, like that, the goal that has never intimidated me, and I've never been doubtful about that. But before I had found financial stability, there was a ton of doubt of uh, that I would actually be able to do this full time. And like coming from the consulting environment, and like my parents were not the most excited about me choosing this path over the safety and security of consulting and like the girlfriend that I had and all that stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, moving back into my parents multiple times. Like I went back when I was 27, and at that age, is like no job, no girlfriend, no income. And you go back to LA, and then you come back, and then it's like I'm back in COVID, and I'm turning 30 years old, and I'm living in my childhood bedroom. And it's funny because people look at you and they're like, oh, you got like, it doesn't mean anything now. And it really didn't mean anything back then. But when I had the blue check mark, when it was like more of a thing. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
you're crushing it. Like, you're doing so well. And I'm like, all right, cool. I can't afford to move out of my childhood bedroom, so I'm not really crushing it. But uh, but I always believed that the me who met 10,000 people was more valuable than the me who made partner at Deloitte, and that it would just be a rockier road to get to that. Because Deloitte, you have
Yeah.
stability the entire time. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, several times, and that's why I'm very thankful that I got into speaking. Because who knows? I mean, when your back is against the wall, you become very creative and you start to think about what you can do. But fortunately, I landed on something that I happen to be good at and people are enjoying, and it's paying well. And it's like, oh, if I never had that conversation with Michelle in August of 2019, I don't know where I would be. So it becomes a little bit scary. But, and I still do like cycles of confidence and doubt all the time. I can do a speech and feel really nervous on stage, and that will like shake my confidence when it comes to speaking. And then I'll do another speech and I'll feel really comfortable, and it'll make me feel very confident. But I think that's just part of being human too, is going through the cycles of confidence and doubt. It's if you're in one area, it's inevitable that the other is on the horizon. That's what I believe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. Like, I know there's lots of people that doubt themselves every single day, but it's the people that pick themselves up and just keep going. And, I mean, and some days it doesn't work, but then, as long as you don't make it, happen like for 6 months at a time,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's at least helpful. Um, but interesting. What do you feel like the biggest win has been in this project so far?
Probably getting to the point of stability, and like
Yeah,
that just happened this year. So, and
awesome.
like a more less tangible win would be staying in the game long enough to get to that point of stability. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people would have quit earlier because I started when I was 24. I took it full time when I was 25.
Mhm.
And that's fine. Like you and your friends at the time are all in the same stage of life, and then you start to see the sacrifices that pursuing one path over another takes. And it's like, oh, okay, all my friends are getting engaged. I'm focusing on the project. All my friends got promoted and are now buying their first house. I'm focusing on the project. Like they're all having their first kids, and so it like put me on a path that was much separate from the rest of them. Um, but it never like, and thankfully my friends are super supportive and they never made me feel any less than for being on a different path. But yeah, just staying in, because I think a lot of people can become self-conscious when they compare themselves to the people around them.
Mhm.
And for me, I just learned it's I'm on my own individual path, and like the only person I need to compare myself is me. And yeah, I just stayed in long enough to get to the point, and now it's very cool because like I got to speak in Berlin last week, and I'm speaking on a 6-day cruise in a couple of weeks, and then I'm speaking out in California and right next to the Sequoia National Forest, and now the narrative is starting to change where people are like, they're paying you to be on this cruise. And it's like, oh yeah, this is nice. Like my preferred way to get paid is to do vacations where I have to speak for an hour. So it's clicking.
Yes.
It's clicking for now. I mean, it's not like the work is done or at the very beginning of hopefully becoming like a frequently booked speaker. But yeah, that's the biggest thing, because my level of stress this year is just so much better than it was in years past. And there's a very real thing of like purchasing a cup of coffee and feeling shame and guilt around that because you're like, I can't afford this. Or like going to the grocery store and buying food that I want is not really a thing. It's like, we're buying by price per ounce here. Okay, we're going to get the most bang for our buck. And so now I'm able to start like crawling out of those things. Uh, Crawling out because it's still there. Like the scarcity mindset wants to be like, oh, but wait, what if you don't have any gigs next year? So yeah, it's a big win, I'd say.
Oh, that's super cool. Like, I know that that stuff can be really, really hard. Honestly, it limits a lot of people when you think small, or the scarcity mindset you just brought
Mm-hmm.
up. It's a really big fucking deal. Um, so what do you How long do you feel like this is going to take to finish up? Like, when do you, like, I'm guessing you kind of already have, like, I'm probably going to hit that 10,000 number in a certain month or year. What does that look like?
So I'm 33 now, and I would like to finish in the next 7 years. So like 7 years from today, or my birthday is January. So I have like 7 years and a couple of months and to do that, I'd need to meet like 42 people a month, which is totally doable. It's basically like 500 people a year. And I've met like 800 people in a year. The first year that I was doing it, when I still was working full time for 8 of those months, I hit 500 people in that year. So it's definitely doable, but it is interesting. Like in that, the doubt can creep in with that because in 2016, 2017, it just was picking up so much more. And I had a list always of like 100 people who want in my DMs who reached out to me, and then I would just get back to them on a first come first serve basis.
Yeah.
And now it'll like trickle in, and then I'll run out of people to meet, and then I have to put out a post, and then I'll have people come in, and then that will carry me for like another 2 months. But also, like people, I feel like people are canceling and not showing more post COVID. I don't know if that's a society thing or whatever, but this week alone, I had 3 meetings scheduled on Monday. Two of them canceled last minute. One canceled like 10 minutes into the meeting. Then I had one person cancel on Tuesday, and then no, two people cancel out of four on Tuesday, and two people cancel out of four today. And so it's like, it's a very interesting journey because you're trying to take steps towards this goal, and you're setting aside the time to do it, and you're showing up to take those steps. And some days, for forces outside of your control, when you're ready to take 4 steps, you can only take two. So yeah, that's how I think it'll take 7 more years, but hopefully, and I think as I get to the end, the interest is going to swing back up more because
Yeah,
the
your last
storyline,
1,000 or something. Yeah, or
yeah,
the
the
last
story,
500 even.
yeah, of getting closer to the goal. Like I think people are going to be like, oh, well, now I want to get in before it's done. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what is your like structure now? Like do you try, like, obviously you just said some people cancel, but do you have a goal of how many people you talk to every day, and do you do it 7 days a week?
I don't do it. I do Monday through Friday, and I try to meet 4 people a day if I'm not traveling to speak. So
Okay.
ideally, there's like I'm scheduling like 80 meetings a month. But
Wow.
like this month, for example, I'm going to be on this cruise for this talk, and my plan is to meet people while I'm on it. But that is the 13th through the 19th, so that whole week, hopefully, I'll meet like 2 or 3 people a day who are part of the conference.
Mhm.
But if not, I'm happy to just sit and enjoy the cruise as well. So that could be a week of just enjoying myself. But then the week after that, I'm speaking in California. And so there's like a whole travel day for that. I'm speaking 2 times on the day that I'm talking. And then the next 2 days, I set aside time to explore Sequoia National Forest.
Mhm.
Because I'm like, well, if I'm out here, I might as well do it. It's going to be harder to pay to come back in the future.
Yeah.
So it's all becoming like this big balance. But yeah, I try to meet 4 people every day. So now
And are-
I'm
Go ahead.
I'm just starting to think of, okay, if I meet 50 people a month, I'm good to go.
Yeah. So what do you care if it's in person? Do you prefer in person versus Zoom? Like, do you feel like you're just always on Zoom?
I did, but it's getting back to more in-person stuff now. And the first,
Mhm.
like, essentially 3,300 people were all in person. Like, I never did a video
Wow.
call before COVID happened.
Whoa.
But there's a ton of value to video calls. Like,
Hmm.
my project would not be as beautiful as it is if I didn't ever expand it. Because then that's how I started meeting people from all around the world, and met people from over 90 countries now. And to get the perspective of what is going on outside of the US is something that I really value. And it would have been hard to do that because originally I was like, oh, eventually I'll have a travel partnership and I'll get to these different countries, or I'll have an airline, whatever it might be. But I think I do like in person because it's just nice to be in the physical presence of someone. But the emotions of someone's story still come through virtual. I mean, I've cried with people many times through virtual calls, so I don't think there's anything lost.
Oh, that's totally cool. So when you go, like, so you're gonna go speak on a cruise, and you're gonna be there for 6 days. Do you just tell people like, hey, if anybody wants to be like, what's even your pitch to people, I guess, to say like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Like, so is it at the end of your speech, you just say, does anybody want to meet for an hour? Come talk to me.
I'll probably tell them that, but the planners, like I told them, I was like, if you want to offer it to people, I'd be happy to meet with them. So
Hmm.
in the promo, I think they're going to be like, if you want to meet Rob while we're on the boat, and they find a time with him. So I already did schedule. One girl messaged me on Instagram and said, "Hey, I saw you're our speaker." So we set up a time to get coffee the morning before I speak. So, and that's happened in the past where people will see that I'm speaking at an event and they'll reach out. But yeah, hopefully, because I was like, I don't care to just sit on the cruise by myself. Uh, Again, it's fine. Like I'm sure I would enjoy it to be relaxing, but I like doing my project because I like meeting with people. So it's
Yeah.
fun for me. So that would be my favorite way to enjoy it, just like I did with Berlin and India.
Hmm. Okay, well now this makes me think this is kind of weird, or it's a little weirder of a rabbit hole to go down. So you meet tons of people all the time, and there's now like this new way people date. That's literally
Yeah.
on an app, or it's at a bar or something. Tell me if there's ever been things that have happened because you meet so many people.
Hmm. I have. There's like a few girls that I've gone out with after the fact. And yeah, it didn't work for whatever, like some COVID fizzled it out.
Hmm.
Others just didn't work out, but I'm always open to meeting my wife through the project. It would make a
Uh-huh.
great storyline, but
Yeah.
I'm also open to meeting my wife outside of the project. Well, I'm so passive again because I always tell people I would never turn around, like, unless the girl like actually expressed clear interest in me. I would not turn around and be like, hey, you know what, we should date, because I'm like, the one time they feel like they can have a platonic conversation with a guy, I'm not going to be the one to ruin that for them.
That's nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's happened a few times that I've gone out with girls afterwards, but yeah, nothing that has stuck. And my project has kind of been my focus so much, and it's a dating is very interesting because I'm like, it's I am the problem, is that I'm not like, when I get
Yeah,
into
your
these.
job is meeting people, is literally to meet people. So at the end of the day, you're just like, do I really want to meet another person?
Yeah, well, I'm just like, I'm so interested in my path and what I'm
Mhm.
doing. And I get so excited about the and when speaking was a thing, like, it was very exciting for me to build that. So, and I think now that that's kind of stable, again, when you don't have financial stability, the only thing that you can really think about is, how do I get to that place? And now
Absolutely.
that I've gotten to that place, it's like, oh, okay, I actually have free time now. What do I want to do? And who do I want to spend that time with? But yeah, with that stuff, I'm like, I I never settled in my career at Deloitte, even though it would have been a great option. And I carried the same thing into dating. Like, I'll never settle into a relationship just because I'm a certain age or I need to do it or whatever. So until someone strikes me and inspires me inside, I'll probably just be single.
It's totally cool.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me, what do you think your superpower is?
Uh, I Empathy, I think, is a big one. I've been told that I'm a great listener, and I think that that is a superpower of mine. Like, when I meet with people in person, I don't take notes, and then I can spit their story back out in a detailed manner, and I think a lot of people are impressed by that. But it does take like a deep degree of listening, of really paying attention to what people are telling you. And I watch their lives like movies as they talk to me about them, and that way I just replay the movie in my mind when I'm going to write it. So I think people can feel the focused attention that I give them.
Yeah, that's so freaking cool. So for the people listening, I was, I guess that he had said already, a couple weeks ago or something, and it's
Mhm.
so neat to, just be part of that thing, and also like You are. You're just like pretty chill. You just ask
Hmm.
these questions, and I can see how you're weaving it
Yeah.
too, because you're really intentional with the way you're doing it, which is probably that thing you were just talking about is kind of like, here's the four things that you need to do to
Mhm.
create a community, create a new friendship, whatever that may be. I love that. Can you tell me if you did you ever set out to did you feel like you were gonna build a community like this? Like, what do you think the intention seemed like?
I just wanted to go on a fun adventure, but
Yeah.
that's what like I don't know if I thought that deeply about like I wanted to be a positive example of human connection for other people.
Mhm.
I don't know if I was like, oh, these people are all gonna feel like they're part of this 10K friends community, and I still don't even know how people perceive it because I'm always on the other end.
Yeah.
So, uh, but yeah, I personally knew that it would be really fulfilling for me, and then I thought that it would be nice for other people. And I talk about it in my talks now. Like I started this in 2015, and if you track connections since 2015, it's like okay, technology is tearing us apart, and then we go into political polarization, and then we have a global pandemic, and then we've got like multiple wars, and then we have AI taking over. Like everything is always moved in the opposite direction. And like, oh, look at this guy and this girl who are totally different from each other. And look, they had a very chill conversation. Or like, look at his background versus their background. Totally different challenges and trials, but look, they had a great time chatting with each other. And I think we miss that a lot right now. Like everything is so tense. And people want to be so tense with each other and say, all right, just take a chill pill. Let's relax. And so, yeah, again, as you know, that's kind of my personality of it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be that like life is a very serious, very brutal thing, but we don't have to make every moment so stressful. We can just take a genuine curiosity in each other. And if we do that time and time again, we'll learn the lessons of where we fit in society and what we have to be grateful for and what we have to shoot for. Like it can be an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. And I agree, there could be a lot less tension in the
Hmm.
world. So it's really neat that I don't know, it's a fresh outlook on things because yeah, it's just true. It doesn't have to be so tense all the time or so much friction.
Sure.
Do you this just popped into my head. Do you feel like so the people that you grew up with, the people you went to college with, all of that, do you ever feel like wanting to interview them? Like I say interview and it's just because I know you have a way about how you talk to somebody for an hour and learn about
Hmm.
them. And I mean, I think about some of the people that I know that I grew up with that it's like I would love to know how they portray their story. Do you ever do that to people like that are in your life?
I don't, and I really, for whatever reason, I don't have like the intention to or the eagerness to either. And I think it's I have very deep relationships with the people that I'm close to,
Hmm.
so I think I have a good idea of who they are. And a lot of times people will be like, "Where do you're like you're connecting with all of these new people? What about your friends that you have?" I'm like, it's deeper. My relationships with them are deeper as a result because I've met people who've lost their friends and who've lost their loved ones. And when you're confronted with that week after week, it helps you realize that you're not going to have yours for forever. And so you don't take it for granted while you still have them. So, yeah, very deep connections with them, but no need to be like, oh, this is their story or whatever, how they would portray themselves. Because I think it's just for me, the project is not even really about telling people's stories. Like that is a positive byproduct of it. The baseline was like this is a way for me to genuinely meet new people and learn about who they are. So I was like, there's no need to meet the people I know because I know them.
Yeah.
So yeah, and people are like, oh, did you start with your friends and family and then you expanded from there? And I was like, no, because I knew them. Like it was all strangers. So yeah, I've just kind of taken that approach to it.
That's super cool. Do you feel like you've learned any solid lessons? Like I'm sure there's a trend. Like I mean of obviously you said sometimes you all of a sudden start talking to doctors and then maybe insurance people or whatever because
Hmm.
people will tell you they're people. But do you still see a trend of like things people talk about or maybe even lessons that they share with you?
Yeah, I think well, because maybe I'm guiding the conversation sometimes. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people sit back and I'm always like, where are you from? Where are you now? And where do you want to go in your life? Like, what's
Mm-hmm.
that evolution? Like, it's easy to talk about career, but I always try to put that into context of how much of your life is actually your career. Because if it's only 30%, like, let's throw that to the side and discover what this other 70% of you is. And that's always fun to do. But I feel like it's like career and family are really big things for people. I see a lot of trends in people wanting to help other people, or like in your case, where people are like, I want to like impact 10 million lives or whatever. And, like that is a trend where you see people like wanting to leave an impact on other people. So the biggest thing I've learned is that no one really knows what they're doing with their lives. Everyone's just doing the best they can with the resources they have. And that's been cool to see because it's allowed me to remove a lot of pressure from my own shoulders. But then, especially when you talk to people from 90 different countries, it's just fun. People assume that people are so different from them. And you talk to people from the Middle East who are like, oh man, like my parents put pressure on me to pursue this field of study. Like, yeah, my parents wanted me to do finance or like to be married by this age. And you realize we're all the same. Like, you talk to someone from India, and the parents are going to be like, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. You talk to someone from Africa, like, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. And it's like, it's all. So it's cool from my perspective to see that stuff too, because I started to think the details of our lives are so different, but the themes are so similar. Like, we all have a family that impacts who we are emotionally. It doesn't matter if our parents are divorced or together or dead or alive. Like, it has an impact on who we are emotionally. We all have to pay the bills somehow, so we have to work a job. Either we like it or we don't. We're trying to do something with like things that make us happy outside of that career and aspirations for what we want our life to turn into. So those things have always been constant. The categories, the details are different, and not to go all over the place, but like mental health is something I think that I find myself talking about with people a lot too. Like, I just got off of a call with a guy who told me how in his junior year of college, like he had planned how he was going to take his own life and knew like the bridge that he was going to do it on. And he was like, the only thing that kept him going was that there was an internal voice in him somewhere saying, not yet. And he's like, and that just kept me going. And now he's in a much better place. And it's meant, and I told him, I was like, I hear this all the time with people who are struggling with their own mental health or have lost people to their struggles. So when you hear stuff like that too, you tend to give people grace. Because when we're at the coffee shop and they mess up our order, like, a lot of people aren't thinking like, what's the depth of this person? They're like, oh, this is the cashier that owes me my coffee at this time. So I always say the more I interact with the depth of people, the more I acknowledge that it exists. So a theme is just understanding that people are an entire lifetime of experiences and not just who they are in that moment that you're interacting with
That's probably my favorite thing I've ever heard.
them.
Because I'm serious. Like, I think it's interesting how, you might have this weird thing with somebody in the parking lot. They were in your way or something. Like, this is totally a personal experience thing where I got into it with somebody in a parking lot because I was blocking his way and I needed an extra 30 seconds because I couldn't physically lift something that I needed help with from somebody that worked there. And I got hot-headed about it because I'm just like, it's an extra 30 seconds. And when you really slow down and think about it, when you're angry, like when I'm personally angry about something, I get less angry nowadays, but I still used to be a little bit more hot-headed where like I would be mad if I had to wait like in a line for any reason, or if it was taking forever. And then you get up to the, the counter, and the person behind the counter is super frazzled. Like, it's not their fault, whatever happened. Either the computer's being slow, or maybe somebody had something that was wrong, or somebody was talking to them. And like we put our anger out there, our like our frustrated energy goes to that person, and it just makes it worse for them, where we could just come to it already being like being a little bit lighter, like being a little bit nicer, and being a little, like, giving a little more grace to anybody who's in front of us, because everybody is going through something. And it's hard to like say that and really let it sink in. But you have like an extreme example, because you talk to so many people, that you do see these people that, like, we don't want to screw up. Nobody wants to screw up. Nobody wants terrible things to happen to themselves, but it does happen. And when it does happen to us, like, we want grace. So why wouldn't we be giving people grace at the exact same, with the exact same mindset? But it's like,
Yeah, they say we expect other people to be at their best of at all times, and then when we're not, we expect grace for it. And yeah, it's so true. And I still will get frustrated with people and situations and stuff, but
of
I
course.
will always be like, okay, I'm being like a child right now. It's so I can have that awareness to like flip that switch. Um, yeah, but it's the same. It's good. Like going to, like, I told you I'm training for this marathon next month, and like I have to run every week in order to be prepared for this marathon. And if I don't run, then my stamina is not going to be as great as it was. My legs are not going to be as strong. And it's the same thing with empathy, and that's why I'm so uh, like adamant about people being intentional about connection, because if you stop hearing the stories of the people around you, you will definitely get overwhelmed with your own. There's too much going on in our own lives to not be overwhelmed by it. And then you forget that other people are good. But then if you're exposing yourself to new people every week or every other week, you at least keep a cadence of realizing you're not the only person in the world. So, and that's one of the things I really like about my project, is it always keeps me humble and keeps me in perspective.
I think that's so beautiful and so cool, because how many people could ever say, like, I mean, I've met a lot of people in my life. I know a lot of people. I have a lot of friends. I have a pretty big community. But how many people can say, they intentionally met 10,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
and then have the perspective of, like, I mean, at the end, you're going to have the perspective of 10,000 people, and all of your experiences are going to be tied together on how you move forward, what you want to do next. Because, I mean, you're still gonna statistically live another 55 years. Like,
Yeah,
just so, like, you have so many more things. Like, that's just a portion of your life, or like a drop in the bucket in the scheme of things. So it's really cool. Um, okay, can you tell me, if you tell me about one of your favorite connections you've made so far? Like something that was just like, whoa, this was so cool.
I met a guy in LA named Matt, who's a flight attendant for Southwest Air, in May of 2019. And when we were leaving, he said, wherever you fly, like if you want to fly wherever Southwest flies, if you want to fly there, you can fly for free because you can use my buddy pass. And people often offer things. And I said, yeah, I'm actually going to take you up on that. So a few weeks later, I flew to Hawaii because it was the coolest place that I could see that Southwest flew from Los Angeles. And I did like the whole standby thing. I flew from Long Beach to Oakland, Oakland to Hawaii, and I got to Maui. And I just booked the cheapest hostel that I could find. And I got there that night and sat down at like this round poker table. And there were just other people from the hostel there settling in and stuff. And I guess these two friends had gotten there shortly before I did, but they were already sitting there. So I sat down and started talking with them. And it was this guy and this girl who were roommates back in California. And they were just friends. And they said, we're driving these other people to this canyon tomorrow if you want to join us and we can spend the day together. So I joined them, and then another guy from my room joined us. So it was the four of us. Had like a great day of traveling with each other. Typical like vulnerability, connecting with people, having a great time in a new place. And I was only with him for like 24 hours. And then because that night they went off and continued their travels, and I stayed at the hostel. And we just kept in touch through Instagram, and they had great chemistry with each other. So last year I wasn't surprised to see that they got engaged. And me and the other guy were like, oh, we knew it. You guys are perfect for each other. Like, we could have told you back then that you were going to get engaged. And I was doing a gig in Napa last year, and that couple texted me. They're like, "Hey Rob, we don't know if you saw, but we got engaged." I was like, "Yeah, that's great." And they said, "Well, we were wondering if you would officiate our wedding because you were,
What?
yeah." So they're like, "You were there in Hawaii, and it's really where like the sparks started to kind of fly for us." So I was obviously honored to do so. So this July, they flew me out to Sacramento, and I officiated their wedding outdoors in Sacramento. It was 114 degrees, and super memorable time. Like, such a great couple, and it's awesome because you never think when you're meeting them at this hostel that, okay, 5 years from now I will marry the two of these people that aren't even dating right now. But those are the moments where I'm like sitting in the Uber on the ride back from the wedding, where then I met all their family and I met their friends and had a great time with them. I'm Ubering back to my hotel, and I'm like, this is crazy that I'm literally in the middle of nowhere, Sacramento. I just married this couple, all because 9 years ago I was like, hey, I think it'd be cool to meet new people.
That is so fucking cool. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy how cool that is. I love that you get to have experiences like this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's so neat. Okay, so wrapping up here, can you tell me what one thing you're looking for right now? What do you need help with?
I'm always looking for new people to meet and more opportunities to speak on stage. Like, people are always like, how can I help you? Those are the two ways. And yeah,
Yeah.
and if people are interested in meeting with me, all they have to do is send me a message on Instagram, and I'll send them my availability. And it's a pretty seamless process. But yeah, that's it. And then, like, luckily everything else is good right now. Like, those are the only two areas of need that I have.
That's super cool. Okay, well, I'll put so on social or on Instagram, it's Rob's 10K friends. I'll put that in the show notes though if you need that. And then I'll even put a little note in there that says if you want to book with Rob, just send him an Instagram message and he'll send you his availability with the Calendly link. And yeah, and then anybody that is looking for speakers for whatever event you're putting on, like, can you give a quick of what you speak about? Like, is just about human connection, pretty much?
Yeah, the value of intentional
Just,
connection.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
not
it's like
just,
the
but
value of intentional connection, and like that framework of how we can create it in our lives. And I've been I've done both kicking off conferences and ending them. And kicking off, people have said that they've seen an uptick in the networking that occurs because I kind of prime them to connect with each other throughout the event. And then the closing, it is like to send them off with this inspirational message of, hey, now it's time to go out and connect with people once you get back. So either or, but I think I like to open conferences because I like to see people build on the connections we create during my session with each other.
yeah, absolutely. I think of like you and I think of any conference I've been to and I'm like, that's perfect. Like it's a great way to start off to be like, this is how you meet people. You really don't have to meet a whole room full of people. You just got to meet a couple of people. Like it's
Yeah.
okay. So that's awesome. Well, Rob, I really appreciate the time. I think you're super fucking awesome. And this is like the coolest freaking project ever. So I'm excited to keep watching. And, if I can ever connect with you people, obviously, I'm totally jamming for that. Like I'm in. And yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It's always nice when someone gives me the platform to share my story. So thank you for having me on the show. It's a true pleasure.
No, of course. Thanks. Thanks everybody for listening and reach out with anything that was awesome about this episode. I love to know so that I can tell Rob more reasons why I think he's awesome. So stay tuned next week. Bye guys.